Have you ever heard this sound? Don't panic. Hey folks, it's Adam with Outdoor Pet Solutions. Today, we're going to talk about repairing your underground dog fence cable, and more importantly, what types of repairs you should never do and the only way you should repair it in the first place. So the scenario is typically this. You're out in the yard working, maybe doing some planting, and all of a sudden you hear the alarm going off in the garage or wherever your fence transmitter is located, and it's beeping away. This audible alarm sometimes sets in panic. Oh my goodness, we cut the dog fence wire. Now the dogs are going to run away, and on and on and on. Panic sets in and you try to figure out what to do. The best thing for you to do is just turn the transmitter off so the alarm stops sounding, and just keep an eye on your dogs. Your dogs are trained to stay in the yard. Remember, the fence system is not really what's keeping the dogs on your property, it's the training. The dog fence system is there to help reinforce the training if need be. So it's not likely that the dogs are going to realize the fence is down and they're going to take off down the street. But it is a good idea to keep an eye on them, put them on leash. That way you know that they're good and safe at home until you can get the fence repaired. Now, if you cut the wire and you see where the wire is exposed, oftentimes folks will just scrounge up whatever they can find around the house to splice it together. And then they put it back in the ground, the system stops alarming, and the fence system starts working again because the copper is connected. These repairs are often forgotten about. They're left in the ground and then they fail. And a lot of times I'm called out on service calls where this scenario has taken place maybe 6-8 months ago. And the customers don't recall making that repair. They just say, hey, my fence system's alarming and we haven't been doing anything out in the yard and we don't know why. And I will come out and the alarming on the transmitter is intermittent. Sometimes it alarms, sometimes it doesn't. And that type of scenario points me in the direction that a repair was made some time ago and it's barely making connection at this point, and it's coming apart, alarming, and then coming back together. And the reason it comes apart and goes back together is because the soil conditions underground, they change. In the mornings, the moisture content's a little higher, there's dew on everything, so there's a decent connection being made and the unit may not alarm. But by the time the soil dries out on a nice hot day, the soil conditions have changed and it's putting tension on the wire, and that repair is now starting to pull apart, which is causing the fence system to alarm all over again. And the worst part of this scenario is when you're using a tracing device to determine where that break is located, it's going to be very difficult to find because most tracers will pump the signal and bridge that slightly loose connection. It'll bridge over it and you'll be able to trace right on top of it, and you'll never know where that break is actually located or that weak repair. So I'll end up usually getting back on the phone when I'm out on a repair like that, call the customer and try to jog their memory of when the repair was made. Has any damage been done to the fence, maybe by an outside company? And oftentimes they'll say, oh yeah, a tree was taken down and we had the stump ground down, and when they did, they cut the wire, but they said they fixed it. Well, again, they will fix it with whatever they have on hand, and it's usually not the proper way to repair it. So I'm going to show you a few examples of the repairs that I come across that I'll have to remove and put back properly. The first example I have are what are called Drycons. This is the most common repair material that I come across. They're sold at Lowe's and Home Depot, and they're little blue wire nuts. The unique thing about these blue wire nuts is that they have a little bit of jelly or grease that's inside the wire nut that's supposed to keep the copper connection watertight. But if you read the packaging that they come in, it will tell you that these are only used for outdoor above ground lighting. So if you have outdoor light fixtures on the home or maybe in your landscaping, these are often used for those types of scenarios. They're not, and it will say that they're not rated for in-ground use. And that's why these dry out and fail all the time. Our next example is just a plain wire nut. This is even a worst case scenario, just a plain wire nut. Stay away from that. There's no grease, there's nothing in there to keep that copper watertight. And why is it important to keep the copper watertight? Because if corrosion sets in on that copper and starts eating down the surface of the cable, it will begin to diminish the radio frequency that's being projected off the cable. And your collars will have a hard time picking up the signal, and that's when your dogs will start venturing outside the yard. But your unit inside will never alarm because it's not broken. It's just corrosion that's set in. So very, very important to keep your connections watertight. So this is another example of an inferior splice. This is a quick snap connection, and the way it's designed is there's a black cap here, and when you purchase this splice, that cap's going to be raised up a little bit. And then there's two holes in the bottom. You stick one end of your cable without having to strip the jacketing off at all and exposing the copper. You just simply plug one end of the cable in there, and then your other end goes in this other hole here. Then you just snap down on top of that plastic, and two metal spikes will cut through the jacketing and make connection to the copper inside, making the connection for you. And there's a little bit of jelly inside there as well. These, just like the Drycons, will dry out and fail and become loose. These are the worst to try to find a break in. One of the most recent repairs I went on involved this bad boy right here. This is straight up electrical tape. And I don't know if you can tell, but here's the black jacketing that goes on top of the copper, and this here is actually the copper itself. It's totally exposed. It's connected, but it was so ripped apart, they simply just took two ends of the copper and twisted it all together and then wrapped it heavily with electrical tape. This lasted about 4 months. So they called me out, and again, they had no idea why it was alarming. And this customer in particular ordered a repair kit off my website and handed it to the guys that were out in the yard doing the work who had damaged the cable in the first place, and they still ended up doing this. That resulted in a couple of trips out because I still could not figure out where this was at until they contacted the folks that were doing the digging in their yard and described exactly where it was they did the repair. I also want to talk about the type of wire that you use to bridge the connection. But this is an example of just regular Romex style wiring. This wire is actually rated for indoor use in walls. It is not designed to be outside in the elements because the jacketing on the outside is not UV resistant, and it's very, very thin. Once this is exposed to sunlight or underground in the elements, it will start to become very brittle and start cracking. And this little clear coating here will begin to peel off. A lot of times this will fail before these splices will. So the type of wire that you use to bridge it needs to be the same exact wire that you use to install your dog fence with in the first place. Now let's talk about how to properly make that repair the first time so it does not cause issues for you down the road. So the only way I recommend repairing your underground dog fence is using these. It's a set of simple wire nuts, but the most important are these totally encapsulated grease capsules. You open them up, they're filled full of proprietary grease that are guaranteed to keep all the moisture out of your connection. So how do they work? It's simple. You take the two ends of the wire and then you strip off 3/8, maybe a 1/2 inch, and expose the copper. That's where you take your wire nut, you simply twist it on top. If you're using the heavy duty 14 gauge solid core copper that I offer in our OPS 1000 dog fence kits, then you'll be able to twist on this a decent amount of times to get a really good connection because this copper is tough. Once you've got it twisted up, I twist the wire itself as well. So now you've got that all twisted up and you've got the connection good and tight in that wire nut. Next, I like to tie this into a knot. The reason is you don't want this to come apart. So if you just cap over it just the way it is, you still run the risk of tension being pulled on the cable and causing that connection to come apart. To go the extra step and to ensure it never does, after you're done twisting it, go ahead and do one overhand knot, just like so. Now you've got it in an overhand knot, and there's no tension ever going to be put on your connection there. Next, you simply take the grease capsule and slide it over top, just like that. So you've got the wire totally sunk down into the grease, and then you just cap over and you are good to go. That is a solid connection that is absolutely watertight. I've actually even used these connections around boat docks that stay fully submerged in water, and they've never failed. If you'd like to order your very own repair kit or just simply have a few on hand in case you run into this situation, you'll be prepared, you can click the link in the description and order yours today. And if you'd like to upgrade your existing system to a professional grade system, be sure to check out the OPS 1000. It's on sale now with free shipping. And as always, thanks for watching. Goodbye.